Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz, Shauketaly.
Hello, good morning, and this is Newsline, live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And this morning we're going to be discussing is there a need to reform the state sector, and who better than Dr. Lalitasri Gunarwan, who's here with us this morning. Very good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning.
Now then, let's start like this. How essential is the state sector?
State sector is necessary.
Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Right. Then why is usually the perception anyway is that the state sector, the service delivery is appalling?
That is also true.
Why is that then?
That's also true because the perception commonly held is that the state sector is inefficient.
Yeah.
State sector is a burden on the public coffers.
Yeah.
State sector is not delivering effectively what the expected services are. So because of that, the perception in general is that the state sector is inefficient, ineffective, and need to be changed.
I've got a separate person who I hire when I need to deal with these things, the state things. I don't want to get my pressure up, and that's because of this perception, that there's 1.5 million people working in there. Is it necessary, so many people?
Well, I cannot answer exactly to your question about the numbers.
Right.
But what I was told, maybe this may be a good point to research and find out.
Yeah.
That state sector in Sri Lanka is disproportionately large.
Yeah.
State sector in Sri Lanka, compared to its size of the economy, compared to its size of population,
yeah,
it appears to be disproportionately large. Starting from the cabinet.
Yes, we mustn't forget that.
How many ministers we have? How many state ministers we have? How many deputy ministers we have? For what size of population? And now you're going to have double the number of local government members on the poor man's shoulder. Immediately after these new electoral reforms in the local government, so it's large, definitely. I don't think you need to do that kind of refined number crunching. Maybe it warrants that kind of a research, but by the size of the things, by the scale of the things that have happened over the past changes that have happened over the past 2 decades, you can very, very easily presume that the state sector is disproportionately large in this country. Then that is a burden on the public man, that's for sure. Take the cabinet of Mrs. Sirimawa Bandaranaike, take the cabinet of Jaya Jayawardena, and take the cabinet today. What is the size of disproportional increase? We had 2 tiers of the government those days, local government and the central government. That's all. Now there is a middle layer called the provincial government also. And the things that the provincial government do, no one knows what they are, being duplicated between the government and the provinces. And now the provincial government and the local government. Why do you need this kind of a disproportional administrative setup? No one knows.
I was talking the other day to somebody in the advertising business, and he told me that I asked him, why don't you advertise on the trains? He said it's fraught with difficulty. He said, but in principle they're ready, and we have done, but it's fraught with difficulty. And I said, can you explain that? He said, yes. He said, you see, one carriage we may take 2 carriages, and so it has to run in sequence, because the advertising message is that it's stretched across 2 carriages. And then he said, but you know what? It's not always guaranteed that these 2 carriages will run in tandem, because you may find either them back to front or one not at all, and so the whole advertising message, there'll be one air but no whatever else it was. So that sort of thing. But that's just a little management thing. I said, surely you can just talk to the guys down there. He said, yeah, you try. And the whole trouble is that they've got state sector employees, if you want, appear to believe that this is a job for life, and therefore they will, once they're in, and they're not thinking about delivery. What can be done to make them accountable?
You are driving me to talk about railway, which I don't want to.
No, right.
Because I have been there,
yes,
so better not. But your question is interesting. How can you make them accountable? That's basically the question.
That's right.
Once you are in the state sector, you think that it's a job of the life. There's an interesting book which was released, I think 2 weeks ago, by Mr. Jinasiri Dadallage. He was the secretary to the Ministry of Public Administration until recently. He retired, and he has written a book, very interesting book titled Ewa Mehe Bamachang.
Right.
Now in this book, he very clearly asked this question: why do you want to guarantee the state sector's stability per se? Like once you are in, you are there, and no one can challenge you, so that you don't have to perform.
It's because of the pension.
Not only the pension. I mean, I have there are different sides to talk. You know, we should not take it as one. Okay, you do away the pension, everything will be okay. No. Because pension taking out, there are many other repercussions and implications. So you can't take it out of context. But the point is, the very valid point you raised is that once the job is secured, I mean that security kind of sentiment comes into your mind, then you don't need to deliver, because you're not accountable. Even if you don't deliver, even if you're not efficient, even if you're not performing, you still can manage. In a way, in this book, he says very correctly, more work, more attempt, more initiative, more trouble you're going to have. So in the state sector, it's better that you do less work and just find out excuses not to deliver, then you are safe. Now that kind of a setup, it's very difficult.
Completely
it's very difficult.
Illogical mentality.
Very illogical mentality. So true enough, on the one hand it's political problems, on the other hand you have this perception of stability in the state sector, which drives towards inefficiency.
A viewer has sent this comment in. Government data shows that between 2006 and 2016, population grew 6%, but public sector grew 40%. Bureaucracy is growing to keep them all busy, crippling the economy. I don't know the veracity of the figures, but it seems...
The fact remains that state sector growing disproportionately without associated delivery growth is a big problem. Now what he says, the economy grew so much, and the disproportional growth in the numbers of the state sector, it's definitely killing the economy of the country. There's no doubt about it.
Well, what should they do really?
Well, that brings us to the discussion of the necessity of state sector reforms. The whole trouble is, I think, the dilemma between the necessity of having the state sector and how to make it efficient. If someone suggests that state sector is not necessary, you privatize everything and you don't have to have a state sector running, I don't agree, because there are certain things the state sector only can provide. There are things in the economy and the society the state sector has to come in. For those who argue for privatization, I would argue, even for privatization, you need the state sector. Even to manage the privatization process, you need the state sector. Even to manage the FDIs, you need an efficient state sector, at least the BOI kind of stuff. Now, the true owners of this country, Faraz, are the public, general public. Now, this general public owns the economy. This general public is the true owner of the economy, not the politicians. So, what is the state? State is a temporary custodian of the management of this publicly owned economy, society, country, assets for the well-being of the public, not only the present generations but also future generations. This is the doctrine that was established 2,300 years ago when King Devanampiyatissa was preached by Mahinda Thero, saying that, "O king, you are not the owner of this property, of this country, of these assets, you are only the custodian." So you need a custodian to manage this public property publicly. So
but the problem is when our legislators reach this position of authority,
They forget about
they
this.
forget all about their responsibility.
That's right. They forget about the nature of their holding the public property in trust.
Yes,
they think that they own it.
They've forgotten that completely.
Completely, and they try to manage it as if they are property and they are owning that.
Yeah.
And then they ruin that within the tenure that they are given. And then, you know, at the next elections, their only purview is to see whether they can get re-elected. That's all.
A viewer is asking whether performance appraisal is done in the state sector.
Performance appraisal is done, but to what level, to what accountability, and how on what platform is a question. Can I give you one example without dwelling too much about the state sector, the government sector per se? A department of the government, may that be railways, or may that be the government workers, may that be the government printer, whatever. The government departments are run based on a certain set of laws and statutes which hold the manager of the department accountable for delivery. I am giving you a job to deliver. Now, Faraz is accountable to deliver. If Faraz is held accountable to deliver, Faraz should be managing his inputs also. Your inputs as your workers, your staff, your money, your material, things like that.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in the government setup per se, not in the statutory boards or authorities, but the government departments, the managers are not managing their resources. The heads of departments don't have purview to recruit their staff. Heads of departments don't have decision to decide their salaries. Heads of departments don't have authority over disciplinary matters of their employees.
No.
So once you don't have the authority over your inputs, how can you be expected to deliver?
That's a good point. And where the state sector, the government sector is not delivering this very little or appalling levels of service delivery. Well, and you said, you drew that analogy between the cabinet and the inflated size of the cabinet. Well, I also have one along those lines, and that is the minister in charge of the subject of the central bank. He didn't do anything. He didn't deliver as he is expected to when this whole problem started. Well, I'm not saying that he robbed the central bank, but I do expect, and I have a right to expect, that he acted within terms of his service delivery. The people expect, and the people expect, like you said. So maybe this malaise is sort of just carrying on down the line.
This malaise starts from the top.
Yeah.
By the virtue of the expectations of the public from their politicians.
Yeah.
I think the government, the ministers, their purview is to make policies.
Yeah.
The first thing we should do in terms of public sector reforms, as far as I am concerned, is not basically asking about performance appraisal or whether one manager per se has been effective or efficient.
Yeah.
The first thing is, we must hold all officers, including political masters, managing the state's affairs, accountable for what they are expected to do. What is expected from the ministry? Ministry is expected to prepare policies and administer, that's all. And what ministers are doing today, what the ministries are doing today is basically trying to run the organizations under them. They are the ones who are making appointments, they are the ones who are making decisions regarding projects, they are the ones who are making decisions sometimes regarding promotions and appointments to certain places.
And they are the ones who are now found out to be having negotiations with contractors.
Exactly. So those are none of their businesses.
Yeah.
In this country, the first reform I would suggest, even if it is possible constitutionally, with a constitutional amendment, try to bring it and say, state sector organizations, at least the strategic enterprises, forget about the other things, should be managed professionally by the professional managers. Take out the powers today exercised by the ministers to run these strategic enterprises according to their whims and fancies. Today, the board of these organizations are appointed by the minister. And if you don't satisfy the minister's requirements, the board cannot survive. And the board members are at the whims and fancies of their political masters.
Let's discuss this further. Very interesting point here we're coming to. But in the meantime, we've got to go for a break. So don't go away. After all, this is Newsline. Welcome back to Newsline, where we are in discussion with Dr. Lalita Gunarawan. Now, Lalita Siri Gunarawan, thank you. Now then, what do you do? What does the public do when they are not getting proper proper delivery from the people who work in government?
This is a very good question. What would the true owners of a private company do when the managers, the bosses of the company, are not delivering what they expected to deliver?
Will be sent home
at the AGM.
Yeah.
Right. So what do the true owners of the public do with regard to their political owners of the custodians of their property? They should send them back home at the next.
So what happens when these guys are not going home and they're only waiting for either Jaratnas or Raymonds or whoever else to
That's the problem.
Do the removal?
That is why I suggest, at least with regard to the strategic enterprises management, at least with regard to the state sector enterprises which hold in trust the public property, be managed professionally, and by constitutional amendment, we take out the minister's authority on those running of those organizations. Let the ministers handle the policy, because people have given the mandate to a government to develop policies. People have given mandate to governments not to appoint the ministers, Toms, Dicks and Harrys in running organizations. This is the difference that you see in certain successful countries like Singapore. Now, Singapore's state sector is one of the most efficient in the world. How can the Singaporean state sector is so efficient and they are managing well in their strategic enterprises? Take Singapore Airlines. It's a statutory, it's a state-owned, state-run organization. Now look at Sri Lankan Airlines here today.
Well, that's because they've got family.
This is exactly the trouble is. Singapore state sector is run by something called, an organization called Thamasek. Now, President Maithripala Sirisena in his electoral pledge in 2015 January very clearly stated in his Yahapalana agenda that he would take this political management of strategic enterprises out in a model similar to Thamasek, where a strategic enterprise management commission, an independent commission, professionally run, appointed by the parliament from the professional bodies, running these organizations efficiently. Today what is happening is the minister comes into power and minister is given a ministry, and what is his interest? You must understand, his interest is to win the next election. He is given a ministry. What has he got to do? He has to make use of that ministry to appoint his catchers and give jobs, and then from his electorate, so that he can win the next election. And he has to earn sufficient amount of money so that he can pay for the election campaigns in the next election. And he has to appoint his lieutenants as managers of these state enterprises. Until such time we sort out this problem, the state sector efficiency is only a myth and it will never happen.
Now then, I don't know who this is, but I've got an SMS through here. It says here, Dr. Gunarawan did say he did not want to discuss the railway. Once upon a time, he explained to me why the toilet seat in the first-class carriage could not be replaced as required, which, if he chooses to explain on air, people will easily understand what fails the state sector.
Well, I don't want to talk about the railways toilets, but this is exactly what I explained as the management authority on the inputs the general manager railway has or any other head of the department has to deliver the goods. I can tell you one example. When I was the railways general manager, when I became the railways general manager, we had 600 vacancies in one grade of staff. So I said, please recruit, because without those vacancies being filled, at least within the existing setup, you cannot manage it. I was answered by my sub-staff saying that, no, you have no authority to fill that vacancies. So I asked, who has the authority? There is another powerful body in the government setup. They are the ones who are appointing that grade of people to the entire set of gamut of departments in the country. So they hold a public exam, 30,000 people, applicants are coming in, and then those who get in are being appointed to different organizations. General Manager Railway has no authority to appoint the required qualified people for those kind of places. How can you explain?
And so this organization is outside of the railways?
Outside of the railways. So, you know, the crux of the matter was, I asked 600, I was given 60, and out of 60, 58 were women, when I wanted men to place into those places. So I telephoned...
And it was obvious that you couldn't do that without, that you needed men, not women.
Precisely. When you want to clock out the people who are coming out of the shed in the midnight, to sign off and come out with the whole maja in your body in the midnight to come into the place and
it's
clocking
not the
out.
sort of thing you want the ladies to do.
Well, I don't mind if the ladies can come up and manage there, but it's not practical in a Sri Lankan setup. So what I'm simply mentioning is, this is only one example. If you are not managing your employment, the human resources, if you are not managing your finances, because the fares increase is not within your authority, the procurement is not within your authority, the expenditure is not within your authority, and your staff, their disciplinary, their appointment, what the hell is Railways General Manager or any other head of the department is managing in the country?
Right.
So how can you hold the General Manager or any other head of the department accountable for the service delivery?
So what's the best solution? Is it to sell off all the state?
Now this is one extreme answer given by the neoliberal class of the economic thought.
Yes, why can't we have the buses, all the communications, all privatized?
You can't, for many reasons. One, whether it is desirable to do it that way.
Right.
If you privatize
But
buses,
it's obviously desirable because there's no service delivery.
Faraz,
That is only one little point.
Yes. Can I explain this?
Yes.
From 1958 to 1988, University of Colombo, we have done a research with regard to the improvement of social standing of this country. Do you know that in the world, Sri Lanka is positioned as an abnormal, extraordinary case where our per capita incomes are less, whereas our social standing is very high. Our life expectancy is high, our literacy rate is very high, our infant mortality, maternal mortality are low. So our social standing, which we call PQLIs, physical quality of life indices, are very high, and those indices match with the very high income countries. Whereas the countries which have low incomes compared to Sri Lanka are having very low social standings. So how come Sri Lanka managed to have high social standings with low income? This is a big question mark placed in the international intellectual.
And how did that happen?
Common answer to that is free education and free healthcare. Right throughout the country, particularly after the independence, the successive governments managed free education and free healthcare. But do you know, the research done in University of Colombo proved beyond any doubt that there is a third factor which can equally or even more important in the social standings. Some econometric research came out, and the research was published in Journal of International Advanced Transportation. That research shows the bus kilometers operated by the CTB was more or even equally associated with the social welfare standings of this country between 58 to 88. That is because you can have the school, you can have the hospital, but it is the CTB's bus kilometers which ran not on profitable grounds but on social grounds, which brought the poor student to the Madhya Mahavidyalaya for him to get educated, the poor pregnant mother to the clinic in the hospital, and that connectivity, that accessibility was provided by none other than the CTB, the very blamed, and people talk about CTB's inefficiency, people talk about railways inefficiency. True, there are inefficiencies. I'm not arguing that there are no inefficiencies. But you would not have achieved these social standings if not for the CTB. State sector is necessary. State sector is important. Without state sector, you cannot probably deliver certain strategic objectives, strategic goods. Take South Korea, take Singapore, take any other country in the world, including Malaysia. The country's development, strategic development, long-term development was achieved through the state sector. For us, private sector is interested in profits. Not very long-term profits, but short-term profits. You're talking about 50 years development scenario. You're talking about technology upgrading. You're talking about human resource upgrading. You're talking about welfare service provision. Generally, the private sector won't come into those things. And you need state sector at least to manage those processes. So, to the level that the state sector is necessary, I'm not arguing for state sector when the state sector is not necessary.
Yeah.
But at least to deliver the things which the state sector has to come in and deliver, state sector has to be efficient. It is equally bad that you run state sector which is inefficient.
Is it a pipe dream, this getting service delivery from the state sector?
I don't think so. I think there is a window open for us to make the state sector efficient.
I'm going to ask you a little question now. Okay, you said there's hope.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You said there's hope. On a scale of 1 to 10, do we have a better hope of achieving better service deliveries from the state sector than having a resolution to the bond scam? Which have we got a better chance of?
But I don't think I can answer to 1 to 10 scale there.
Okay.
You see, that of
in your perception,
that itself shows the lacuna that I mentioned, the accountability gap. See, if you have authority, a huge gap. If you have authority without commensurate responsibility, you are bound to misuse the authority. If you have responsibility without due authority to deliver, then you are inefficient. What happened in the government departments is they have responsibility given by their respective ordinances to deliver those. They don't have authority over the human resources, the managers, the finances, nothing. On the other hand, certain political authorities, political masters in this country, they have authority without having due accountability and responsibility. Obviously, those kind of events are basically on.
There is accountability and responsibility. It's just that they don't exercise that. They don't let themselves be accountable or
when you hear your own case, you as a judge, you hear your own case, then the problem comes up.
I wish you didn't say that, because now I'm going to have to point out that the Minister of Law and Order is also at the epicenter of the bond allegations.
Well,
but unfortunately, that's the way it is. He is the Minister of Law and Order.
So what should happen? As much as the true owners of companies penalize the managers at the next AGM, the same thing should happen with the true owners of the country.
They have. They voted. All you have to do is look at the results of the last.
Exactly. So then they'll have to listen to it, and then the necessary steps have to be taken politically.
Do you think that they are deaf to the people's message?
They are only interested in their political survival. That's all.
Well, Professor, Doctor, thank you very much for being on Newsline. We appreciate your invaluable input.
Thank you.
And we hope that we can discuss this on one of our longer programs like Face the Nation, which is broadcast on Monday nights, 9:30 on TV1. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's the way it was on the 6th of March 2018 on Newsline. Take care. God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.